Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thrive Beyond Cancer Summit. Today's guest, I am so excited to speak with her. Her name is Kimberly Ann Price. She is the CEO of Be a Thriver. She's also a philanthropist, a mother, a health strategist, and a wife. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Miss Kimberly, she is a stage 4 cancer thriver. How important is your faith, and how has your faith helped you heal?
So, my faith has always been a big part of my life. Cancer wasn't my first struggle that I had in life. But it was very impactful. And I would say even life-changing in the moment, that you hear those words. Those are big words to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say instantly, my faith is what really grounded me in being able to walk out. I tell the story of, I don't have a lot of memories of being diagnosed, but the one memory that I have is sitting, on the edge of my bathtub, and a good friend of ours who's a physician calling and saying, "Kim, I'm sorry, you have cancer." And then on the other side of that door, we had 4 little kids under the age of 6. Remember hearing their voices and knowing, even though my world had come crashing in, I had to walk out that door and still be a mom. And so, I always say my faith is my foundation, because I don't know, had I not had the faith that I have, if I would have been able to walk out that door the way that I did, back into the world, and really from the time of diagnosis, feel as strong as I did, and knowing that no matter what the outcome was going to be, that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. What an amazing story, girl. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you chose to do chemotherapy. What other things did you do besides chemotherapy?
Yeah. So my journey, I would have probably told you prior to my diagnosis, I was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I, exercised. I've not been overweight. I, watched what I ate. My kids ate very healthy. Um, but they're now looking back, I know there were a lot of things in my life that were missing. And so I remember, I'm terrified of drugs. I don't like the way that I feel when I take them. And of course, losing my hair was, something that I didn't want to do also. I have a treatable, not curable cancer. And so the difficulty in me choosing a treatment regimen was that it was sort of like, the way I describe what the doctors shared with me was, there was a dartboard and there were multiple options on this dartboard, and I could throw a dart and hit one. And it working was dependent on me, my body, how my body would react to it. And then 2 was staying in remission. There were no guarantees either way, just because of the kind of cancer I have.
Mm-hmm.
There are some cancers where you have a specific diagnosis, there's a specific protocol you start with. If that doesn't work, you move to another one. And this particular kind of lymphoma doesn't work that way. So they had many options, and I could choose, what that option was. So I spent about 6 months or so going down the path of holistic, trying to figure out ways to strengthen my immune system, alternative therapies to help my body fight the cancer versus having to, move to a drug. But ultimately, my counts kept getting, lower and lower. And so I did end up making the decision about 6 months later to go ahead and go with the chemo. And that was a 6-month regimen every 3 weeks. And I also had another drug that I did for an additional 1.5 years. It was a monoclonal antibody. So yeah, that was what I ended up choosing.
Wow. I ended up choosing chemotherapy as well, and then doing some other things as well, just like you.
Yeah. And I think, the big thing that, if I wanted people to hear in my story, there's a lot of individuals out there that choose to go the route of zero chemo. And there's many, many, many more that choose the route of the medical route of the chemo and those types of things. I wouldn't demonize any route.
Yeah.
There is a place for both. There is absolutely 100% a place and a time in some cases where the body just gets so beat down by the tumor load that in order to get it over the hump, you need, some traditional, medical help to get you over that hump. And then you need to support yourself with holistic therapies for healing and rebuilding and repairing some of the damage that you can do with those traditional drugs. So I always say to people, when I work with people or we have conversations, there's no right or wrong in this. And for anyone to say that there is, they're wrong. And that's funny. I say no right or wrong, but you're wrong in saying there's a right. But it is. It's wrong to say there's a right. And there's many reasons for that. We don't have a cure for cancer yet. And yes, the body is amazing at healing itself. But there are times when it just isn't strong enough to do it, or we can't quite find the right pathway or the right thing to aid it in healing itself. So it's a dance. It's a dance between the two. And what I tell people when they make their decision, whether it's to go that whole holistic route or it's to go that medical route, your mind is a powerful thing. And when you make that decision, you don't look back. You just know what you did was right for you at that time and that moment. And you don't let anybody else ever tell you different, and you don't tell yourself different, and you move forward. And if you need to make another decision and change that route, then that's okay too.
Yeah, that's really great advice.
Yeah.
That is so good. Because everyone's trying to tell us what to do, right? And I just need to figure out for myself what's the best thing for me to do. I need to go within and figure that out. And like you said, not feel bad about the decision that you make, whatever decision you make, and move forward, and feel good about it. So that's really good advice. So what have you learned about yourself in the process of going through all of this?
Oh, wow. How long do we have? No, I'm kidding. Oh gosh, a lot. Tons. I mean, so I was diagnosed in my early 30s. So I think just in that in itself, the kids were little. I had just started a company. I was really on that front edge of life, when things are all beginning and, you're stepping into the world and nothing is known. You don't know what it's like to raise kids. You don't know what it's like to run your own business or a new business. And, then you have a cancer diagnosis on top of it. So I faced my mortality at an age that, many don't. And so I think there were a lot of life lessons in it. I think the biggest life lesson was probably around time. It's something that I know those of us that have faced our mortality talk to others about a lot.
Yes.
But it's a really hard concept to teach I think those that are older would get it because they're also in that stage. But I think until you hit, 40 normally without a tragedy, it's just a really hard concept to teach people. You're not going to be alive forever. Every day is a day, closer to death than you were the day before. You can't predict the future. So it's that, I think the biggest lesson would be take advantage of, or really make sure that you enjoy every day that you have, and that you don't spend your life planning for a future. Because you don't even know that you're going to have a future. You really have to take advantage of time while you have it.
I totally agree with that. And I was going to ask you, but I believe that would be your answer to that question is there anything that you didn't do before you were diagnosed that you're like, I'm absolutely doing this now after going through all of that?
Yeah, I think my husband and I just had this discussion the other day on urgency. I went through a period of really feeling this urgency to do as much as I could. And I wouldn't say I feel that urgency anymore, but I still feel that desire to Like I don't have anything holding me back from doing the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So if there's something I really feel like this is something I really want to do,
Yeah.
before I would say I probably would have, my personality is not one to hold back anyway. But I think this has just opened up yet another door that if there's something that I want to learn or something that I want to do, I go after it.
Hmm.
And part of that too is that I think about things like, let's say, and I don't want to do this, but let's say that I wanted to climb Mount Everest.
Hmm.
So the experience of being 40 and doing that versus 70 and doing that, completely different. Not to say one is less fulfilling or more fulfilling, but I don't know. Yeah, I just think that's a long way off. And what if I don't get there? And what if by that time my body doesn't work in a way that I can get there?
Yeah.
So why put off those dreams
Right.
if that's really a dream, like a big dream? So
That's really good. And you said that your cancer is treatable; it's not curable. So, how do you use your faith and whatever you have to do to get your mind right, to not think about the fear of, oh my God, like it's going to return one day, and because we have to get these tests done or we have to get these scans done, and each time you know
yeah.
it's not good.
Yeah. And I would say that I don't know. I just have a peace. I've had it since the beginning. I
Mhm.
can't describe it. I know a lot of people that I've been around don't,
Mhm.
and I don't know how to tell them. And a lot of them have a strong faith and still just don't. I think part of that is our wiring too. Some
Yeah.
of us are wired to worry,
To
and
worry.
others, are not wired to be worriers. So I think part of it's my personality for sure,
Mhm.
and then I think my faith really backs that. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's probably my answer is I think it's a combination of the two, just, the way that I'm wired as a person. And I've accepted that I think especially this is something I tell my friends that have had a metastatic diagnosis
Mhm.
that are worriers.
Mhm.
Some of them have already been sitting with this disease over 5 years. They have a metastatic breast cancer, or metastatic, colon cancer, whatever it might be. They've already been living with the disease for 5 years, and they're still talking to me about being worried about dying. And
Mhm.
my point to them is, you've just been existing. You're not, you're not living, and you've existed for 5 years already. What if you are here another 5 years? What kind of legacy are you leaving to those that are around you in this constant cycle of, it could be tomorrow, it could be tomorrow? Well, how many tomorrows do you need? Today's a gift.
Right.
So utilize today, to do the things that you can do to live your life, and that's going to look different for all of us,
Mhm.
um, because you don't know. I mean, I've been here 9 years, and really for the most part, a pretty amazing 9 years. And so I think to myself, that's been a blessing.
Yeah.
9 years in remission has been a blessing, and I could have another 9 and another 9. So
Mhm.
why spend my time thinking about what might be and not just live the days that I'm given to live? So
Mhm. Yes.
that's what I try to focus on. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean I don't have my days
Mhm.
of thinking about things.
Yeah.
I want to be real about that too. That fear, um, overall, 98% of the time, I would tell you I'm good.
Yeah.
But I do have those days for
Mhm.
sure.
That's good. That's some more good advice. Which is great to live that way, that having that peace is amazing. And reminding yourself of the peace when you do have those days when you're thinking about it probably a little bit too much instead of enjoying the day and the moment that you're in.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yeah. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But
yeah.
that was why, yeah, that's why I started Be a Thriver. It was really just about teaching, people the small things that you can do. First, self-discovery, discovering where you're at, and then, where do you want to go from where you're at? And then how do you get there? You have to have a roadmap to get there.
Yeah.
And like I said, whether it's a, stage 4 hospice patient, or, it's, a stage 1 diagnosis and likely will never come back, you still need to have a roadmap to get, from where you are to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So.
And can you talk about Be a Thriver for us? It's amazing. And also the importance of community, because Be a Thriver, it's like for everyone who has been diagnosed with cancer, or a cancer thriver, survivor, striver, as you call it. Can you talk about Be a Thriver?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's been, I've had many different renditions of this idea over 9 years. And this last year, I've spent a lot of time in it, and I still haven't launched it. I've worked with people. I've had a beta group of 60 people. I ran them through a program. It's still sitting there. And I think it's definitely my philanthropic, it's my passion, where my heart is. And what went behind that, again, was just this idea that after a cancer diagnosis, next to war, it's one of the only things in terms of disease that causes similar symptoms to like a PTSD. And people really get stuck in this fear of reoccurrence and this anxiety, and there are things that stop them in life, and they don't move forward. And so it's this existence that they have with this hovering, it's like they're living in the shadow of this disease, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
We all are going to face things. And so just because we're facing something head on doesn't mean that we need to let it stop us. So it's been this desire to connect people in a way, in a positive environment where you can empower yourself to move forward. And in doing that, you're also empowering others to do that. And so here's sort of the analogy that I use. If there's 1,000 of us that have had cancer, and you figure you've got tens of thousands of people around each of us, well, if you take the sum of us and you look at our caregivers, our supporters, our friends, and those that are watching us, we've got tens of thousands of people watching us collectively. So if we as 1,000 choose to live our lives in fear, and all we talk about is how horrible it is, and our fears and our anxieties and all of the negative in our experience, what do you think the tens of thousands are going to think about cancer? They're going to think it's awful. They're going to think, oh my gosh, this is never anything I want to experience. You can't live after you have it. Life stinks. There's never any possibility of anything again. It's going to suck the life out of me. I mean, think of everything negative you can think.
Exactly.
That's the example we're giving the world.
Yeah.
Whereas if we take the 1,000 of us, and even in the darkest, ugliest of every experience that we have, we show the light, what are the tens of thousands of people watching us going to think? It stinks. It's awful that they have it. I wouldn't want to get it. But boy, if I do, living's still possible.
Oh.
And so that was the point of Be a Thriver. It's connecting individuals in a positive space to see that life is possible until you take that last breath. So.
That's so good. That's like, I'm getting emotional over here because it's so true. That's why people are so afraid too, in addition to getting cancer, it's a death sentence, and it's just like this dark cloud all the time, and realize it doesn't have to be that.
And it's not. There's so many things that I've done that I never would have done. And there's ways of being that my kids are going to go out into the world with that they wouldn't have gone out with had I not had this, and my friends, and there's really a lot of, I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Yeah.
But it's shown me a lot. It's been a pretty great teacher of things, to be honest.
That's powerful.
So, yeah.
That's so good and so inspirational. And Be a Thriver website, I was on it, of course, and it is very inspirational, and it made me feel like I belong, part of a community that gets me and what I've been through. It's like, again, I'm part of something. I'm not being ostracized or looked at differently because of what I'm going through, which is something that can totally happen to us. But
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And my hope too in it is, we all have a dream to do something. And when we shed that, it's almost like when we face our mortality, we shed a layer of ourselves that oftentimes, if we let it, allows us to let ourselves go. So maybe we're in a job we hate. We think, well, sheesh, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I'm going to get that job I want. Or we're in a bad relationship. And so we think, I don't want to waste my time in this anymore. I need to move on. Or maybe you make it better.
Yeah.
Or, you go take that trip that you said you'd never do, or you start that business you said you'd never start. So that was the hope with Be a Thriver too, is that eventually it would be a space where we could break off into, if it was relationships people wanted to work on, or they wanted to start a career or a business, how do you do that? And then connect people to each other to help each other realize those dreams that they have. So I'm just at this point with it where I'm the creative, so I've created it, but I don't want to run it. Now, when I say that, I mean, not that I don't want to be involved in it, but there's a whole business backside to it that has to be done.
Yeah.
And I don't want to run that. So I'm in this place of waiting for the right person to come along and say, hey, I want to be the business person. I want to run this. Let's turn it into a 501c3. Let's make it a foundation. Let's do a capital campaign. And, you be the creative and I'll run the business side. So that's where I'm at with it right now.
Wow. That's awesome. That's good. Yeah. Wow. Can you break down for us real quick the difference between striver, survivor, and thriver?
Yeah, sure. So I've defined those my own way. So you can look them up online, but they're probably not going to be defined like I've defined them. I do have a quiz on there you can take, and it takes you through and it'll show you what you are, defined by me. So you might consider yourself a thriver, and I might actually call you a striver. But that's okay. So a survivor to me is somebody that they're just going through the motions. So, a lot of us, you do what you have to do to get through what you have to do. And so I see a lot of people surviving when they're in the heat of their treatment. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to get through treatment, get to the other side, figuring out what to do, how to do it. That to me is sort of that surviving stage. They're not exactly clear on what the outcome is going to be. And so there's this place of just sort of that day to day doing what has to be done to get to that next day. Yeah. Striving are those that sometimes those that are in treatment hit striving before they're out of treatment. So it's this desire to be beyond where they're at. They can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they don't have any idea how to get there. Mm-hmm. So they're in counseling. They've got a group of friends around them that are positive and trying to inspire them. They've gotten connected with a group that, they want to be a part of, but they're still waking up every day feeling like they're feeling the weight of the cancer still. Mm-hmm. It's still there. It's still heavy, but they're working hard to try to get out of it. They just don't have a roadmap to get there, or they're just still in the process of working through how to get there. So I would say their days are more, definitely more on the, I wouldn't say positive side, because survivors can be positive too. They're just not seeing the difference between existence and living, where strivers are definitely seeing the difference between just existing and living. Mm-hmm. And thrivers, I would say, are those that they get it. They just get what it's like. Does that mean that they don't go into survival mode at times? No, absolutely you can do that. But they get that there's a bigger life. They want that bigger life. They work every day to focus on what that looks like. And they're not just existing. They've moved beyond their diagnosis to some degree, and they're impacting the world in a big way with what they've been through. And big way can be in your own home with your children. So I also don't want to, minimize that big way isn't always big in the world way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. In your world.
Yes, big in your world. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've been a health strategist. You are a health strategist. Can you talk about that? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so I it's funny. I've been wrestling with bio. Like if somebody says, "Hey Kim, what do you do?" I've been wrestling with I know what I'm good at. I know what I love to do. And I haven't been able to come up with this real inspirational, and it's more about inspiring myself than it is about having something that really, takes hold in others. Cause I think it's more your energy behind what you say that you do.
Yeah.
So I'm actually playing around with calling myself a whole health architect,
Okay.
um, or a
I
whole
like
health.
both names, by the way. That's what I was like, tell us what that is.
And that's kind of what I want. I want something that's like, that's really intriguing. I kind of get what it is, but yet I don't really get what it is. Um, and yeah, so I believe the body can do amazing things. And I believe, all of our health is tied to both emotional and physical well-being. And I'm always reading, I'm always researching, I'm always learning. Um, Not only the science and the physiology of the body, down to like a cellular level, how things work, but, you know, I read different trends that people are doing and fads and diets and, foods. And then for me, it's how do you take all this information and package it in a way that if you come to me and you say, here's where I'm at, I can see that in you and I can hear you, and we can design a plan specific to you and your body and your lifestyle that works to get you from where you're at to where you need to be healthier. So that's to me what a strategist is. I really work as sort of a guide, you know, um, my friends were joking the other day, a Sherpa, a health Sherpa. So I help lead the way for you in finding what's right for you. No quick fixes, but we designed a plan that works, whether it's rebuilding your body, maintaining where you're at, and a lot of what's involved in that is not just your food and it's not just the physical. A lot of it is the mental and emotional pieces that are tied. And, I think that that's bigger oftentimes in our sickness than what we're eating is. So,
You can say that again.
it's
Because I
huge.
was like, I've been eating healthy for a long time. I mean, yeah, sometimes I, have addictions to sugar,
Yeah.
but I didn't really think about how our emotions and mental will play. It has like a huge impact on our body
Huge.
until this happened. And I'm like, wow, you know?
Yeah. Mindset's very important. I would say even in a diagnosis,
Yeah.
doctors who have been in clinic, for years will tell you the patients that always do the best, whether it's a stage 1 or a stage 4 diagnosis, always are the ones that have the mental attitude that they're going to get through it and they have hope. Always.
Yeah. I can see
So,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, besides diet and nutrition, what are some of the ways that we don't nourish ourselves that we're not thinking about? I know we just talked about emotions and mindset, but what are some other ways that we're not nourishing ourselves, like we're totally neglecting?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, how long do we have? I just had this conversation today with somebody. I think as women, and I know there'll be men on here too. So I'm going to speak to women because I'm a woman. And so I really can't speak to men. Although I do think men need to stand up and speak to this also.
Yeah.
Um, we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We just don't. We put everybody else first. Um, and when we're putting other people first, we feel guilty about the things that we're not doing. So if we're not working enough, we feel guilty. If we're working too much, we feel guilty. If we don't get the laundry done, we feel guilty. If the house is a mess, we feel guilty. If we go on a vacation, we feel guilty. If we don't talk to our friends enough, we feel guilty. I mean, we are just heavy with what we don't do. And we don't support each other in it. Women years ago, one, didn't have the responsibilities that we take on today, as many of them, because they weren't out in the working world. We didn't have technology, so we weren't bombarded with that all the time. Life was just a little bit slower, I think. But women were in community all the time. They, out on their front porch, kids playing together, supporting one another, hanging out, talking with each other, exchanging recipes, cooking together. Um, and I think a lot of that has gone away. And it's been, we want equality in a men's world. But at the same time, we if we want that, we have to recognize the things that we also need. And so when we go into that world and we cut each other down, we take each other out so that we can advance in front of, that's not the way women work.
Yeah.
Really, at the core
Yeah.
of who we are not the type that we don't cut each other out in a business deal, and we're just not hard-nosed. In general, women aren't like that. Women take care of each other. They help support each other. And I just feel like, we become a very judgmental, we judge each other a lot. And I think we've made it very difficult. So we
Yeah.
carry this burden. And I would venture to bet if we lined a bunch of women up, many women feel alone in the world. So
You are
and
absolutely right.
yeah, it's not good to feel alone. It's not
Yeah.
good to be alone.
Yeah.
And we're not made to be alone.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
interesting you say that, because when I kept thinking about where it is that I want to be. And I used to live in New York, and I love Brooklyn, New York.
Mm.
And I kept thinking, like, why do I have this thing about wanting to go back to Brooklyn, New York? And I finally realized why. It's because I feel like I'm part of a community.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that's the reason why I want to go back there. Places where you thrive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so take you back to be a thriver. So in a cancer diagnosis, it's very similar.
Yeah.
When we're diagnosed, everybody comes around you in the beginning, and they're there and they're cooking meals and they're supporting you and they're helping you and they're calling you and sending you cards. And you get about 6 months in and you can feel it start to fade.
Yeah.
Those closest to you are still there, but those on the fringe are
Yeah.
usually falling off. And then by the time you get to a year, really falling off.
Yeah.
And if you've got a chronic or a metastatic cancer or an untreatable cancer, or even if you've hit remission, you still got to go back and do those doctor visits.
Yeah.
We're still going through everything we were going through when we were diagnosed.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world has gone back to their lives. And so we're left standing, even when we're still surrounded by family, like we're alone. And we stop talking because we don't want to be the burden of always talking about cancer and our fears.
Yeah.
And so it's a really alone place.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind Be a Thriver, is that there's a community there, a community of people that understand and that you don't have to feel alone in, even if you never talk about the cancer,
Yeah.
because you're just next to somebody gets it.
Yes. Yes. That's why I was like, yes. Yes. Thank you for that. So what are some of your self-care tips? Because I'm sure you have a bunch. Just with everything, like who you are, what you do, what you've been through. How do you take care of Kimberly?
Sometimes I don't do as good a job as I'd like to, although I'd say I do better than most of the world. Sleep is huge. If you're not sleeping enough, I'm going to tell you, that's been my worst. I feel that my non-guilty time is after the kids go to bed at night.
Yeah.
And so I like to stay up until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, because I literally feel like, oh my gosh, I have hours by myself. Don't have to do anything for anybody, right? So it's not a tip to stay up late. Going to bed is probably, and getting enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours at least a night, especially if you've had cancer or have it. It's your healing time. So much happens when you're sleeping. So that'd be number one. Eating well is super important. And I would say, and then self-care.
Yeah.
So making sure that there's time in your day for you, and that being a non-negotiable. Because I tell women this all the time. You don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. You can't. So you're kidding yourself. You're lying to yourself if you're going through day after day after day taking care of everyone else and you're not taking care of you. Either you're going to get sick or sick again, or you don't realize you're actually not taking care of them. Your attitude, your emotional state, your physical state, you may be in a complete cloud on what that really looks like because you aren't taking care of yourself.
Thank you so much for this interview. It was awesome. Is there anything else you may want to share or tell the audience?
I always like to say, if you're just existing, the one thing that nobody can take from you is the choice that you have to choose to either just exist in this life or to live in this life. So I say choose life and let's get living.
Yes, I love that. Well, we're going to end it with that. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you again, Kimberly, for being with us today and for all that you're doing to help us heal and be better in the world. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for
God
having me on.
bless you. Of
Really.
course. Thank you.